Welcome to the webinar. The webinar today is World Rhino Day webinar. I am your moderator. My name is Brigadier Retired John Wawero. I'm the Director General of the Kenya Wildlife Service. As you can see, we have very distinguished panelists with us today. Maybe I should give you a minute or so to log in. I know we're coming in from very far. We have a lot of people who might be interested in this. But while we're doing so, and while we're waiting for you to log in and join us today, I wish to introduce our panelists. And I will start with our guest speaker for today. And that is the Cabinet Secretary, Ministry of Tourism and Wildlife in Kenya. And that is Honorable Najib Balala. Welcome, sir, welcome. The next presenter is Dr. Rob Brett. Thank you, sir. The next panelist is Mr. Richard Vine.
Good morning,
welcome, Richard.
Good morning and good evening to everybody.
Thank you, welcome, Richard. The next panelist is Mr. Mike Watson.
Hello, everyone. Nice to be here.
Mike. Thank you. Thank you. Our next panelist is Dr. Patrick Omondi.
Good morning, everybody, and good afternoon.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dr. Omondi. And last, and definitely not least, Dr. Philip Murudi. Welcome.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. Glad to be here.
Thank you. Welcome to the webinar again. Indeed, it's a very exciting day for us. First and foremost, to recognize that it's World Rhino Day. This day was initiated to raise global awareness on the status and threats that face this very special species. A series of public activities have been held in different countries over the years since the day was declared, including here in Kenya. This will be the first time the day, World Rhino Day, will be celebrated virtually given the threats of COVID-19, since it is important that active publicity is maintained in any form possible to ensure attention to rhino protection and management is maintained. And I'm sure you would appreciate that. The day is celebrated globally and unites government agencies, NGOs, cause-related organizations, businesses, and concerned individuals from every corner of the world. The theme for this year is 5 Rhino species forever. All of the world rhino species are under threat, mostly from poaching of their horn. The horn is mainly used for traditional Eastern medicine. As much as we know, the rhino horn does not have any medicinal properties. Other threats include availability of secure breeding areas to spur growth. Kenya hosts the Eastern black rhino as well as the Southern white rhino and Northern white rhino, having been introduced in the country as an international strategy to save these white rhinos. Today, we will have an opportunity to learn more about the status of all these species. Today's webinar will bring together stakeholders in the field of rhino conservation, both locally and internationally, as well as the general public to celebrate our heritage and share information on rhino conservation that will bring awareness globally on the plight of the rhino, not only here in Kenya, but also its entire range in Africa and Asia. It is now my privilege and honor to invite our first guest speaker, Honorable Najib Balala, Cabinet Secretary, Tourism, Ministry of Tourism and Wildlife, to make his remarks before I invite the rest of the panelists to the webinar. CSR. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Director General and the moderator for today's webinar. Today is the World Rhino Day. I want to say congratulations to all of us who are committed to the well-being of rhinos in the world, and also to the growth of rhino numbers in our world. So yes, I want to appreciate Director General and the team that is here, the panelists and Kenyans and everybody who is participating here today for a wonderful, we hope we're going to get a wonderful presentations as well as knowledge, but more important is today is an awareness day because these are endangered species in the world. And I have a small presentation. I want to do the presentation. Probably my colleague should put my presentation on the screen, please. Page number 1. So yes, today the 22nd of September, and it is earmarked to be the World Rhino Day. And you know that, we have 5 species of rhinos. That is black, white, the greater one-horned rhino, and the Sumatran, and then the Javan rhino. And yes, these are 5, but I want to add one more. So it's 5 plus 1, which is the northern white rhino that are endangered, and there are only 2 in the world that are based here in Kenya at the Old Pejeta Conservancy. So yes, it is 5 plus 1. So we are working every effort to make sure that these white northern rhinos are saved as well and produce more rhinos as well. So yes, this is more of awareness, and we want to give it all the publicity so that we can be able to protect these animals. They're endangered, their numbers are bad and not very encouraging, but we hope we can be able to improve on the numbers. But the Kenya government commitment for saving the rhinos are 4 key ones. Number 1 is rhino conservation. Number 2 is rhino security. And we want to use modern technology to secure these rhinos and protect them. Number 3, the biological management and enhancing the population by creating more space, which is conducive for the breeding of these animals. And number 4 is resource mobilization post-COVID. We are suffering now because we don't have revenue for conservation, but yes, we are not going to compromise our national heritage because of COVID, and we are not going to compromise because of lack of resources. We are going to pool all our resources, both human and financial, to safeguard. Next. So yes, there are 5 other, next slide. There are 5 endangered rhinos. You can see there, the Sumatran rhino, there is the Indian rhino, then there is the white rhino, there's a black rhino, and the Javan rhino. And I want to share with you the numbers here. The numbers that are here with us, we have 27,296 rhinos in the world as 2019. 2017, 5,500 are black rhinos. Southern white rhinos are over 18,000. And also the greater ones are 3,500. Northern white rhino are 2. And then the lesser one-horned rhino, which is Javan rhino, 68, and Sumatran are 78. So you can see the numbers. They're not encouraging. They're only about 28,000 rhinos we have in the world. But yes, we want to do every effort to make sure that this population goes up. Next slide. Next slide, please. Yes, so you can see Kenya is the second highest in terms of number population, then South Africa, Namibia, and India. So that is the numbers, but I can say that in the last 40 years, there were only 400 rhinos in Kenya. Now we have almost double, that is black rhino. But we have almost 1,400, including the white southern rhinos, the southern white rhinos. So yes, we are doing all efforts to make sure that these populations are maintained. Next. Please, next slide. You can see the breakdown there. We have 1,441 rhinos, 794 rhinos are black, and 645 white rhinos are white. And remember, the white rhinos are not indigenous from Kenya, the black ones are. And then we have 2 northern white rhinos. And in 2020, we had 45 new bats that were born in this month, in this year. So yes, those figures are important. And then you can see the 2 northern white rhinos. Old Pejeta is the custodian on behalf of the country. And I want to congratulate Richard Vane and Old Pejeta for a wonderful job of preserving these iconic animals. Next. Next slide. Next slide, please. Yes, and you can see the dangers that are to these rhinos. You've seen the poaching before. We are lucky in the last 3 years, we have done very well. And also poaching has reduced to only 1% of rhinos. So we had 4 rhinos were poached, 1 black and 3 white in 2019. And touch wood, till today, we are trying to save. So no incident has happened and no poaching cases has been reported. Next slide. Next slide. This is a northern white rhino. Next slide. So yes, we want the growth and the protection of the rhinos, and we need to address the mortality and other causes, because we have seen that has grown very high, which is 5%, which is not very good. So we need to know what are the reasons. So our team, our researchers, Dr. Omondi and his team are working on it. We also need to sustain the gains made to prevent the future extinction of these iconic animals. So we have 5 points. Number 1 is maintaining high levels of security and surveillance, and we need to use technology here. Number 2 is to provide sufficient and dedicated spaces for breeding. You have seen what we have. We have Ruma National Park, we have Nakuru National Park, we have Ngulia Savo National Park, we have Savo East National Park, we have then Meru National Park, we have Abadeas National Park, and then we have Old Pejeta, we have Old Jogi, we have, which is the other one? Those are 2 private ranches, and Solio. Those are 3 now. And then we want to expand to do also, we have our own land, which is Eland Downs and Segera area. We want that belt to be a rhino area, and the vegetation is right. So we want to make sure that we have sufficient spaces dedicated for breeding. And then also we must make sure we don't talk about illegal trade. We need to stamp out all trade concerning rhinos and rhino horns, so that we can be able to preserve these animals and increase the numbers. And number 4 is to encourage and provide incentive to landowners to keep, because it's also very costly to keep these animals and secure them. And number 5 is about funding. Our estimate of funding in KWS is about $4 million annually in terms of managing these ranches or these sanctuaries of ours, and almost 1,000 rangers we use every day. So yes, we need to protect them. So therefore, we call for your support for rhino conservation from all over the world by working together, and let the world know that we care about the plight of rhinos. Nothing that is, we don't do something. If we don't do something now, then we will have an extinction forever. So we need to do something now. That's why we celebrate the Rhino Day, and we need to protect these iconic animals. So I want to say thank you very much, Director General, and the colleagues on this webinar, but also I want to appreciate the Kenyan support and the global support on the support to rhinos. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Waziri. Thank you very much, our Minister for Tourism and Wildlife in Kenya, for opening up our presentations. We will now go to the next presenter, and we will be requesting Dr. Rob Brett to talk to us about biological management to grow rhino numbers and securing additional space for rhinos. Welcome, Dr. Brett.
Thank you, Banadiji, and thank you, Honorable CS, for the invitation to participate in this event. Harry, could you put the slide up, please? So I'm going to talk about black rhinos mainly, and how Kenya has achieved some success in increasing numbers, as the CS mentioned. I'll be looking back historically at where we've come, where we've got to over the last 30 years since the formal rhino conservation program started in Kenya, and what success has looked like up till now, and what success could be achieved in future, depending on, and critically depending on, how quickly the rhinos can be managed for increase and for growth, as well as protecting them. Could we have the first slide? Wow. Sorry, Harry, I'm not seeing the first slide.
I hope there's no technical issue at the back. I'm sure our techies are on it.
I think it's going.
Yeah, it's called Murphy's Law. When you really need it, it doesn't turn up. Oh, there we go. Please go ahead.
I hope this is visible, and the first slide. Thank you. So the first thing I wanted to do is just look back and just for us to recall how plentiful rhinos were in Kenya once. This is a photograph taken in the late 1950s on the Mombasa Road at a place between the Savo River and Kibwezi. And as you can see, in those days, the hazards of driving on the Mombasa Road weren't so much trucks, it was rhinos. And next slide, please. At that time, Savo Park and into the late 60s contained more black rhinos than exist in the entire world today. Estimate of between 6,000 and 9,000 rhinos. That's not just the rhinos that are wild, and black rhinos that are wild in Africa now, but all the zoo population as well. And it's also important to realize that Kenya also contributed rhinos outside Kenya at that time, from a very small area just on the edge of Savo Park, in that area in yellow on the right-hand side, which was a former hunting block, number 29, which used to have at least 1,000 rhinos in it in those days. And it is from that area where most of the rhinos in zoos, or many of the rhinos in zoos, are descended from, because that's where so many game trappers operate. And it's also from that area that rhinos were captured and taken to South Africa and bred up in Addo National Park and Thaba Tolo, and from which small populations have been re-established through reintroducing Kenyan rhinos to Rwanda and northern Tanzania. So it's important to realize that Kenya has contributed from the Savo ecosystem immeasurably to the future of rhinos in other places. Next slide. So we're looking at sort of three phases in terms of how the rhino sanctuary model in Kenya has evolved. Starting in the 1970s, when there was massive reductions of rhinos around Kenya and throughout Africa. But at that time, there were some very important moves made to try and establish small breeding populations in two areas in particular, and we know them well. There's Nairobi National Park and Solio Ranch, and they were each stocked with about 20 rhinos. And there was real foresight by the owners and the managers of the Kenya parks and the game department at that time to put those rhinos in that were collected from straggler populations around. And by the late 1980s, both those areas had started to show considerable increase. And it's on the basis of those areas that the rhino sanctuary model was established and then replicated. And it was important also for Kenya that the risk to rhinos was spread between the national parks and the private sector, and now the community sector as well. And the principle of biological management was that you could increase rhino populations at between 5 and up to 10% by keeping stocking densities below carrying capacity. And it was on that basis that new populations were established under that model at Lewa Downs, Lake Nakuru, Ngulia, and Olpejeta up to about 1995. And thereafter, the basis of the whole program, guided by a succession of national plans, was to try and increase and continue increase through maximizing growth rates and aiming to achieve a national population of at least 2,000 black rhinos. We still haven't got there yet, but a lot has been done in the meantime, stocking new areas like Meru and Ruma, and then Barana and Sera conservancies in the north of Kenya, and reinforcing existing populations as well. And also, and importantly, to establish rhinos out of confined areas in the Savo West IPZ and in Savo East. And fortunately, the several years of elevated poaching appear to have been contained now in Kenya. And the result is that we do have in Kenya several continentally key or important populations: Olpejeta, Lewa Barana, Ngulia, Lake Nakuru, Oljogi, which are now reaching and even in many cases exceeding their carrying capacity. So the challenge is to try and find new range with which to use these surplus rhinos to continue this growth. It's also worth noting that through the past 20 years, the southern white rhino population has increased by 7%. Now, looking back to 30 years ago at the start of the phase of sanctuary development, the target was to, and as with many national plans, is to grow the national population at an average of 5% a year. And what's been achieved over the last 30 years is a doubling of the national population from 400 to 800 rhinos, but that was actually only an average growth rate of about 2.3%. And we can see from the graph of the dotted line that if we had managed to grow at 5%, we would be approaching that 2,000 goal of black rhinos. But what's important now is looking ahead is that we try and hit that 5% target and achieve that those 2,000 rhinos over the next 20 years, so that if all went well, we could almost achieve that target by 2040. And I hope I'm going to be around to see that. Next slide. So finally, it's really important to emphasize the point that rhinos aren't just lost to poaching, they're lost to lost breeding opportunities. And that's why it's important to maximize growth rates through keeping stocking densities low and spread the risk by securing the best habitat available and moving rhinos to those areas. And there's potential habitat. There's at least space for 1,000 rhinos in Savo West and Julus and Meru, and in the North Kenya conservancies and forest reserves for 500 rhinos. So the habitat is there. The question is can it be secured, and is there capacity to manage it? And that management needs to be actively done to avoid overstocking of populations and maximize the net growth rates that we can achieve as a buffer against poaching. And importantly, and especially for the future, to develop generational capacity to last, to ensure good management over the next 20 years for a new generation of Kenya rhino conservation. And key question I'm sure will be tackled by the speakers to come: how do we ensure the self-sustainability of this program, particularly through financing? I better stop there. Thanks very much.
Dr. Rob Brett, thank you very much for your presentation. Indeed, quite enlightening on how the population of rhinos has changed with time over the years. there is a question from one of the participants, and maybe Dr. Brett, you would like to just say, since there was a number of county forest areas, why can't we move the animals there for conservation and breeding purposes? You know, within the counties, I think that's what they're asking.
Sorry, just the question was where to?
Since there are a number of county, say forest areas, why can't we move the animals to those areas for breeding purposes? One of the participants, Kiprono Kiplagat, is asking.
Yeah, well, that would be possible as long as first of all, as the habitat is of a good enough quality to support rhinos, and notably that enough capacity is there to ensure good enough security. So there's various things that have to be in place for us to establish new rhino populations. But any area could be considered by KWS if it had the right attributes.
Thank you very much, Dr. Brett. We shall now take the next presenter. And the next presenter, who is also talking about the rhino conservation success story in Kenya, is none other than Richard Vine, who will talk to us about saving rhinos from extinction and the case of the northern white rhino, a Kenyan initiative. Richard, welcome.
Thank you very much, Wana DG. Thank you for having me on this forum. Can you see my screen?
Not yet. Can you share it, please?
Let me try again. Hang on a second. Okay, that should be better.
Yes, yes, we can see it.
Let me just try and get up to, right, that I hope is what everybody can see. So my job today is to talk principally about the Northern White Rhino Recovery Program in Kenya. Just to put it into a little bit of perspective, those two rhinos, the two remaining Northern White Rhinos, currently live on the Old Pejeta Conservancy, which is also home to one of the largest populations of black rhinos in Kenya. So we're a significant contributor to the National Black Rhino Management Program, but we get a lot of publicity and interest about the Northern White Rhinos. So let me talk more about them. Just to give a little bit of context, the Northern White Rhino used to occur across quite large parts of Central Africa. And as recently as 1960, there were at least 2,000 Northern White Rhinos remaining. I mean, the chances are actually that there were many more, and the chances are also that they extended over a much bigger historical range than is indicated on this map. By the 1970s and 80s, records have it that poaching for horn had reduced Northern White Rhino populations where they still existed to around about 15 animals. There was a huge effort, I believe, in the Garamba National Park in the Democratic Republic of the Congo to intensively protect the remaining population of Northern Whites, and that was to some extent successful. By mid-2003, the population had recovered to around about 32 animals after a huge, intensive, and I'm sure very costly effort. However, by 2005, with renewed poaching and a lot of insecurity in that area, there were probably only 4, at least in an intensive aerial survey that was carried out, only 4 animals were found, 1 solitary adult male, a group of 1 adult male and 2 adult females. They were the last known Northern White Rhinos in the wild, as far as we can tell, notwithstanding continued rumors from places like Sudan that there may still be some remnant individuals remaining. So by that time, we and Old Pejeta had been together with other partners talking to a zoo in the Czech Republic. At that time, it was called Dvor Králové, and they had a small population of Northern White Rhinos, as had other zoos across the globe. But in all of those zoos, it had proven very difficult to get these animals to breed successfully. There had been the odd success, but very few. So they approached us to see if we would be willing to develop the infrastructure necessary to relocate the last 4 remaining potentially reproductively active northern white rhinos to Kenya, to the Old Pejeta Conservancy, in the hope that by putting them back into a more natural environment, that would stimulate them to breed and thereby assist us to rescue the species from the brink of extinction. So they arrived ultimately in 2009. They were placed slowly over a period of time into a purpose-built enclosure, which is around about 600 acres in extent. The picture you see in front of you is one of the male northern white rhinos. I believe it's Suni mating with one of the females, Fatu. There were two males and 2 females that were translocated to Old Pejeta from Dever Kralebe. And there was lots of kind of territorial and mating behavior, but unfortunately, no pregnancies resulted. There were also attempts to crossbreed using the males on southern white rhinos, which is a closely affiliated species or subspecies, but that also proved to be unsuccessful. And upon further examination, it was discovered that both females, their names are Nain and Fatu, were incapable, even if they or incapable of, likely to be incapable of becoming pregnant, and at least in the case of Nain, incapable of carrying a calf to term, even if she did become pregnant. So that left us with only one option in terms of recovering this species. And that is through what is known as ARTs, otherwise referred to as artificial reproductive techniques. By this time, the male Suni had died, and in 2018, Sudan died. So we were left with 2 females, both of whom had reproductive issues, even if they hadn't had those reproductive issues, no chance at all in the absence of males of becoming naturally pregnant, hence the need for the use of ARTs. So with the help of partners from across the globe, together with the KWS, we have over the years developed a team who are developing the techniques that we hope will enable us to recover this species. The species we're concentrating on is in vitro fertilization. That's using a probe that is inserted into the females once every 3 or 4 months whilst they're under anesthesia to remove eggs, with those eggs then being taken overnight to a laboratory in Italy, where they are subjected to a process known as ICSI. ICSI stands for the intracytoplasmic sperm injection. And what it involves is taking a single sperm from stored semen from northern white rhino males that have died over the years in zoos, and injecting that sperm into an egg cell in the hope that it will grow to form a viable embryo. So far, we've done 3 rounds of what are referred to as ovum pickups, and they have resulted in the removal of approximately 30 egg cells from the 2 females. But of those 30 egg cells, only 3 embryos have successfully been made. And those embryos are now sitting in storage until such time as we have the ability to implant them into surrogate southern white rhino females for the purpose of creating purebred northern white rhino pregnancies and hopefully calves. So going forwards, we will have to carry out ovum pickup as many times as possible for as long as the 2 females are alive, in the hope of creating as many embryos as possible, in the hope, as I've said, that we can ultimately create, using surrogate southern white rhino females, a breeding herd of northern white rhinos, which could in the future be used to restock those parts of Africa from where this species originated. Before I finish, a lot of people ask me the question, what is the point of doing this? It's true to say that 99% of all the species that have ever existed on planet Earth have gone extinct. Extinction is a natural phenomenon, and the truth is we can live without northern white rhinos. We have other species. But I think the point about all of this is that the current rate of extinction in the so-called sort of human era far, far outweighs what is referred to as the natural rate of extinction, what has naturally been recorded in history. And what is happening to the northern white rhinos is a simple signal to what is actually happening to millions of species across the planet. And this loss of biodiversity has massive, far-reaching implications for the human race and our ability to exist on this planet. So really, this whole program that Kenya is leading to recover the northern white rhino as a species, and it's going to cost $10 to $20 million if we're going to be successful, is actually a real chance to send a powerful signal to the world about the extinction crisis that we face. So for me, that is a large part of the reason for doing this. And if I finish by saying that the story of Sudan, the last male northern white rhino, is reckoned to have garnered something in the region of $600 million worth of publicity around the globe about the subject of extinction. I think you'll understand the point that I am making, and also the importance of this program, not only to Kenya, but to the globe as a whole. Thank you very much.
Thank you very, very much, Richard. Indeed, the story of the northern white rhino is one that does touch the hearts. And talking about that, we do have a participant, Elaine Wanjiko. She's 10 years old, Kenya's youngest Mashujaa. And she says, many rhinos used to be there on Mombasa Road. It is good to see that we're having young conservationists within our forum. Thank you very much, Elaine Wanjiko, for participating, and please stay on. She asked a question: how to help increase awareness on rhinos? How do we help increase awareness on rhinos? I don't know whether Richard or anyone in the
I can try and answer that, DG, if you would like. I mean, I think the work surrounding the northern white rhinos, which is so supported by Kenya government, is helping a huge amount. And the truth of the matter is, I think rhinos are a charismatic species, and actually it's not that difficult to draw attention to them and the plight that they face from a poaching perspective. I think what we all need to remember is the millions of other species across the planet that are currently faced with extinction, and which are probably going extinct without us even noticing. And I think that is as big a problem as the plight that faces rhinos today. So for me, rhinos is a signal to the extinction crisis that the planet is facing.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Richard. We do have another question from Jamie. And Jamie wants to know, how do you suggest we improve genetic diversity?
Again, Bona DG, it's going to clearly, when species reach low levels, genetic diversity is likely to be reduced, and that can lead to all sorts of problems around inbreeding, depression, and et cetera, et cetera. It's particularly acute for those species such as the northern white rhino, which are down now to the last remaining 2 individuals. Luckily, we have I think it's 8 or 9. We have semen from 8 or 9 different males, so it's not quite as bad as it would look. But nevertheless, you know, clearly the genetic diversity in the northern white rhino populations, if we are to recover them, is going to be an area of major concern. And that would apply to Sumatran rhinos and to Javan rhinos, which are down to incredibly low numbers. So preserving genetic diversity going forwards is massively important. And the National Black Rhino Management Program is very sort of cognizant of this, to the point that the genetics of our black rhino population is monitored, or has been monitored in the past, and is fairly well understood, meaning that we can move rhinos between reserves in the hope of avoiding inbreeding, depression, and all of the animals in each particular reserve becoming too genetically similar. It's definitely a concern, and it will be a concern wherever a species is allowed to reach the kinds of low numbers that we've seen with many rhino populations across the world.
Thank you very, very much, Richard. As we move to the next presenter, we will first go to a short video just to put in perspective what Richard was talking about. We had the Cabinet Secretary, Honorable Najib Balala, and some of us had the rare privilege of being present to see how the eggs are harvested. And we'd like to run a short video so that you can actually see and share with us what it is that we saw on that day. So kindly, the techies at the background, can you kindly run that for us? Ladies and gentlemen, sorry about that. We couldn't get the sound. We will run that video again so that you can then get it together with sound, but so that we can be able to continue with the webinar and keep time. I now wish to invite Mike Watson. Mike Watson will talk to us about Rhino security and modern surveillance technology. Mike, welcome.
Thank you very much, Buona DG. Just confirm you can see my screen now, please.
Yeah.
Yes, we can.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you very much. Waziri, buenos dias, and everyone on this webinar, Waziri, to your minister, or ministry, should I say. I'd just like to say thank you very, very much for offering us the opportunity to talk to you today. We're really, really grateful. As has been said already, my name is Mike Watson. I'm the CEO of Lewa Wildlife Conservancy and have been since 2011. And I've been asked to talk to everyone today about rhino security. A little bit of background, what I can tell you is, and I'm sure everyone will remember, 2010 to 2013, when Kenya as a country was suffering a significant crisis in terms of poaching, not only of rhino, but of elephant as well, as was the rest of the continent. And over that period, between 2010 and 2013, Lewa lost 17 rhino. That's 17 rhino in 3 years. And animals were being poached across the country at relatively similar unsustainable levels. And during that time, we as Lewa and Barana Conservancy established as a rhino sanctuary just to our west, and there is no fence between the two properties. Now, we started to understand that there were really 3 key pillars that enabled us to enhance security for rhino and provide security for rhino across the landscape that we were responsible for, with well over 200 rhino in this particular area between Lewa and Barana. And on the basis of those 3 pillars, and obviously recognizing that security is a multifaceted element of conservation, but those 3 pillars that we focused in on allowed us to reduce the poaching substantially, and we've since 2013 only lost 2 rhinos. So over 7 years, only 2 rhino have been poached on Lewa. And those 3 pillars were partnerships, intelligence, and technology. So partnerships, firstly, the really strong and robust partnership that existed and continues to exist between government, private sector, and communities that are involved in conservation across Kenya, and in particular in rhino conservation in the sort of aspect of what we're talking now, was without doubt one of the single biggest game changers for us, if you will, in terms of enabling us as Lewa and Barana, as a private sector rhino sanctuary, to really get to grips with the security challenges that we had. And so that partnership between government, private sector, and communities is something that has really been recognized outside of Kenya. We've had a number of visits from other African countries, from the public sector, from the private sector, and from communities, coming to look at Kenya's success story, coming to look at the challenges that Kenya's had, but also the successes that Kenya has had. And one of the things that they consistently remark upon is the level of integration, collaboration between the government, public sector, private sector, and communities. And it's something that I think that we as Kenya should definitely celebrate and focus on improving even more. Secondly, intelligence. Now, clearly intelligence is inextricably interlinked with the partnership between government, private sector, and communities. That doesn't really need to be said, it's fairly obvious. But every aspect of intelligence that we engaged in and encountered in partnership with government entities and with the communities led us to recognize that investing more time, effort, and money into intelligence was going to be money, time, and effort well spent. And that continues to be the case even today. And it without doubt, that really enhanced our ability to reduce the poaching threat here on Lewa and Borana, but also across the country. And we have seen over the years, as I'm sure everyone knows, or many people know, a significant reduction of rhino and elephant poaching and other poaching across this country. And intelligence has been a massive contributor to that. As the old adage says, forearmed is forewarned. If you can prevent something happening because you know who's involved and when it is likely to happen, and or give the people that are likely to conduct that or attempt those poaching attempts, if they know that they're likely to be caught as a result of good intelligence, they are less likely to engage in that. So intelligence, a really critical component of rhino security. And lastly, technology. Between 2010 and 2013, we were approached by numerous organizations, numerous companies, and numerous entities from across the globe who had interest in supporting us in developing technological solutions to address some of the security challenges that we had in the context of rhino, many of which we examined, some of which we investigated in detail, quite a few of which took us down rabbit holes that didn't actually lead to anything. And what I will say is that we spent a long time looking at the whole idea of utilization of UAVs or drones to enhance security of rhino on Lewa and Borana. And whilst there's no doubt that at some point in the future, as technology improves and costs come down, we believe that drones will have a really significant role to play. At that stage, we felt that the return on investment was not going to be one that we should embrace at that stage. That said, there are a few elements of technology that we did come across and were party to the development of that really have been a game changer and force multiplier. And one of these is called Earth Ranger, also known as the DAS, D-A-S, which stands for Domain Awareness System. So this Earth Ranger or Domain Awareness System was developed by Vulcan Limited, which was set up by Paul Allen, the founder of Microsoft, in partnership with Bill Gates. When many parties came together to start to try and understand how technology could help solve some of the major challenges that were being experienced in the conservation sector, not just poaching and insecurity, but across the conservation sector. But we were homing in at that stage on security, and in particular security of rhino. And 8 years ago, during the height of Kenya's poaching crisis, we hosted a meeting here on Lewa with many conservation partners from North Kenya, along with representatives from tech groups such as Google and Vulcan. And this day-long sort of tech workshop, if you will, tech sort of blue sky thinking, cemented the concept, which evolved into what we now know today as Earth Ranger. Earth Ranger is basically a software system which aggregates data from numerous different standalone software platforms via what we call APIs, which stands for an application program interface. And in layman's terms, and I am a layman, we refer to it as a plugin. And if you look at the screen here, you can see various standalone platforms, if you will, be they satellite, aircraft, tracking devices, be they collars on animals or implants in animals, vehicles, radio communications and or telephone communications, fences with sensors. So a multiplicity of standalone software platforms are brought together and aggregated on one mega platform, if you will. And the mega platform is what is now known as Earth Ranger. And it allows for a more integrated management and use of data across a broad landscape. You can see here the user interface in the Lower and Northern Ranges Trust operations room, being used by one of our senior communications and operations room staff. And you can see it's a touch screen, which enables us to, or enables him to interact effectively and in a seamless fashion with Earth Ranger, which is at the back end of this computer screen interface. Right now, Earth Ranger has been rolled out across 82 sites across the globe in 22 countries and on 3 continents, covering an area of 427,000 square kilometers, roughly the area the size of Paraguay. And you can see from this map on this PowerPoint slide that Africa has really hugely embraced this opportunity of using and rolling out Earth Ranger, this software data aggregation platform in protected areas, across government protected areas, across private protected areas, and community protected areas.
Mike?
Yes, sir.
Your time is up.
Okay. Would you like me to stop there or just one more minute?
Just one more minute. 30 seconds. 30 seconds. 30 seconds.
30 seconds. Okay, so this has also been launched relatively recently in a number of national parks, feeding into Kenya Wildlife Service headquarters, and is focused on collating data on human-wildlife conflict at a national level, which is clearly critical. For the future, what we believe is, whilst those 3 pillars can be enhanced, so much of what we have talked about in the last 6 or 7 minutes is underpinned by money, and clearly innovative financing and or further comprehensive fundraising is going to be a critical component to the future. We're really excited to see the Rhino Impact Bond being developed at a continental level, and hope that it will be the success that it so richly deserves to be. So thank you to everyone, and thanks to all those donors, visitors, tourists who visit Kenya and support conservation. Thank you, and apologize for running.
Thank you so very much, Mike. Very informative what you had to tell us about Rhino security and the technology that you're using to be able to protect these beautiful species. Now, a few questions to you, Mike. One from Dixon Kailo. Dixon, welcome. Thank you very much. Dixon is a good friend of Kenya Wildlife Service. What lessons have we learned in rhino conservation from human-induced factors? That is the question from Dixon. Mike or any member of the panel would like to tackle that?
I will take a stab at that, Bonadiji. Thank you, Dixon. Hi, thank you for joining. Good to know that you're on the platform. I would say probably one of the single biggest lessons that we've learned is that one cannot conserve unless people are involved in the solution. And I think that harks back to the point I made under partnerships. I think without people, and when I talk about people, I'm talking about whole groups of people. There are 45 or close to 50 million people living in Kenya. Unless the majority of those people are involved in the solution to the conservation challenges we have, and embrace and are invested in the future of wildlife in this country, then that will make the job even harder. So I would say that is probably one of the single biggest lessons that we've learned.
Thank you, Mike. There's another question here from Parker Lees. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Parker Lees from Canada. And they'd like to know, knowing that poaching remains a top threat, what measures can be taken to tackle demand pressure? Anybody in the panel can answer, or Mike?
Maybe I can hand this over to Patrick Omondi or someone else. I think Patrick's going to talk about CITES later anyway, so maybe Patrick can talk to this now.
I can answer that, DG.
Oh, thank you very much.
We have a clear campaign against illegal wildlife trade, but also particularly for endangered species, is to have a total ban on trading of these animals, so that we can be able to stop the demand and the supply. So we have been successful so far. Recently we went to CITES. We made sure that particularly the elephant ivory and the rhino horns are not delisted, as well as we lobbied hard with China. China has now banned the sale of illegal trade, wildlife trade, but also now they have banned pangolin. Pangolin is another endangered species. So pangolin now is going to be saved, as well as the weight wildlife market. That's another success story we have achieved. But yes, it's going to be a fight. It will be the supply and demand. And whenever there is more demand, the prices will be higher and the supply will be required. And we who are protecting the supply or defending the supply, it will be a big challenge for us. So that's the position we have. Maybe somebody else, Rob, you can add as well, or Patrick.
Dr. Mondi, you want to say something to it? Your mic is off. Can you put your mic on, please? Thank you.
Ready.
Go ahead, Dr. Mondi.
Thank you, moderator, and thank you, the CS. I think the rhino horn is used for things human beings can do without, because it's not medicine and it's not a power and energy-giving powder. So I think the cabinet secretary has clearly said it, that the humankind can do without rhino horn, because it doesn't serve the purpose that the traditional beliefs that they do. And I think a basic fact that the World Health Organization have confirmed that rhino horn is not medicine, so humankind can do without. So it's a call to the global community. We have to have a sustained campaign to reduce the demand in the consumer states, particularly in the Asian countries. So if that is done, all those presentations we have had on poaching and illegal trade will be addressed in all the rhino range. And I think, moderator, I think I will be discussing this subject in my presentation on CITES and the issue of illegal trade on rhinos and rhino horns. So if you may allow, maybe it is the right time to get to me.
In fact, perfect timing, Dr. Patrick Omondi. It is indeed your time to talk to us about the illegal rhino horn trade. So you can go ahead, please, kindly. Thank you.
Thank you, DG, our moderator for today. And thank you, Cabinet Secretary, for the opening remarks that formed the contest. Unlike the previous panelists, I do not have PowerPoints because I'm going to discuss about CITES. CITES is the Convention on International Trade on Endangered Species of Wild Fauna and Flora. So there's a trade there and there's conservation. So when this convention meets, we don't use PowerPoints because we talk about money and we talk about conservation. So you can imagine you will not have time to do PowerPoints. So I will not do PowerPoints during this World Rhino Day celebrations. So CITES is intergovernmental treaty that was established in 1975. And it was established to regulate international trade for threatened species. And the way CITES operate, and I want to just to mention them because I'll be making reference. We list species into 3 appendixes. The appendix 1 is those species that are highly threatened because of international trade. So when you are listed there, international trade is prohibited except for some very exceptional conditions. Then appendix 2, trade is allowed, but it is regulated through the CITES mechanism. And then appendix 3 is where we feel if trade is done, then it will threaten the survival of the species. As a country, we ratified CITES in 1978, 3 years after CITES was established. Now, coming to the rhinos and CITES, we have been told that we have 5 species of CITES, and all of those 5 species were listed on Appendix 1 of CITES in 1977. 1 year after the, 2 years after the CITES convention was established. And if you listen carefully to Robert Brett's presentation, he talked about Savo and having had thousands of rhinos all over the Mombasa Road. One of the hunting blocks having 1,000 and contributed many. One of the reasons why that population was reduced from over 20,000 to less than 400 is because of poaching, and mainly for the rhino horn. So as a country, we have a history. And that's why when the Waziri talks about no to trade, we are talking about a sad history. 20,000 to less than 400 individual is no mean thing that you can forget. Since that listing in 1994, the CITES Convention downlisted the Southern African population of white rhinos to Appendix 2 to allow for some level of trade. And subsequently in the next CITES in 2004, Swaziland was allowed also to downlist their population. That created a window for rhino horn laundering, because now we had what we call a split listing. Because the 5 species of rhinos, the horn is the same. It's just like your nails. It is, it's keratin. So it created a window for laundering because there were countries that were allowed to trade and others had their trade prohibited. And that myth enhanced, and we had huge pressure. The black rhino, the greater one-horned, the Javan and the Sumatran rhinos are still protected under Appendix 1, and trade in these species and their product is strictly prohibited for commercial purposes. So the illegal killing of rhinos and trade in rhinoceroses continue to be a major problem across Africa and Asia. The rate of killing, particularly in parts of Africa, had increased dramatically, threatening the continued survival of rhinos and negatively impacting the ecosystem in which they live. We operate, and I think in many countries in Africa, we hold rhinos in what we call fence sanctuary. In Kenya, we have about 16 fence sanctuaries. We only have 2 populations that are free range. And if they're free ranging, we create what we call an intensive protection zone, that we have men that do surveillance 24/7 to monitor rhinos in this free ranging area. Why is that so? It's because people still have appetite for the rhino horn. And this is what is driving poaching in the rest of Africa. So why do we still have rhinos in closed fence area? And that is the presentation again that was done by Rob Brett, that for us to spur growth, for example, we talked about a growth rate of 3.5% for Kenyans black rhinos, and we want to get to 5%. We have managed poaching to levels that can be controlled because of huge investment by government and the political support and the interagency that we have. I think we are one of those country range areas that have not recorded significant level of poaching in the country for the last 3 years. But to grow that number to 5%, we need now to get secure, safe area. And to get this secure area, we still need to have them in fenced-in area, electric fence, IPZ, because people have demand for the horn for rhinos. So the solution to contain and ensure that we have biological growth, we have that population grow, is to work on the demand side. If people stop believing that rhino horn is medicine, and rhino horn can give you more energy to do what naturally you should be doing, then we will be able to have rhinos free-ranging, breeding naturally, and men now easy. You can sleep. You can imagine 24/7 surveillance, how much it costs. So we are convinced that rhinos need their horn. I think they need their horn. And because these horns are not medicine, as a country, and this is something that we have advocated during the CITES conference, we believe that rhinos are more valuable when they are alive. Because when you talk about a rhino horn, it's when it is already dead. And that it will pay more when it is alive than when it is dead. And if you see the numbers from the presentation and from what the minister talked about, we have slightly over 27,000 rhinos globally. So we should be able to grow this number for the generations to come. So I know it's been a hot debate within CITES. As a country, we have been able to influence resolutions and decisions to parties, particularly those on those consumers that believe rhino horns have to be used as medicine, so that they're able to report to us what their action is in law enforcement. And that resolution...
Patrick, your time is up.
So I'll sum up, moderator. I think 9.14, and we have continued to reinforce it so that we're able to regulate, because there's still countries that have legal markets. We are able to regulate the link between legal and illegal market, which is a very, very difficult thing to undertake, given that this rhino trade, illegal trade, is organized and is transnational in nature and very difficult to manage. So the solution here, moderator, and I want to sum it up, is to work on the demand side. We need to come up with the demand reduction strategy, create more awareness for our people, so that we are able to leave our rhinos to free range, not in fence sanctuaries, but in very free eco areas that we have across our country and across the continent. Thank you, And I'll leave it there.
Thank you very much, Dr. Patrick Omondi. Very enlightening indeed. And as Patrick was closing, he talked about the fact that we must shut down the demand. And of course, the minister had talked about that. And to do so, we just need to shut the markets and make sure that any trade in rhino, either trophies or anything to do with the rhino, is banned totally. And that's the only way we can be able to keep the rhinos alive. Thank you so very much. Some questions. And one question here comes from Sami Ruto. And Sami Ruto is asking, what measures have been put in place to ensure that habitat loss is contained? I think any member of the panelists can answer that. I don't know whether Dr. Omondi would like to do that or any one of the others. Dr. Omondi?
I can take it up. I think for us not to lose the habitat meant for wildlife, we need to make conservation be a source of livelihood for the communities that live with the wildlife. And our concept in Kenya is to the concept of having community wildlife conservancies, where our communities derive their livelihoods from their sanctuaries through tourism-related activities. And this has been able to increase the area under conservation from the slightly over 8% to almost 20% through the concept of community wildlife conservancy and improving the livelihood of communities by making sure that at least they take conservation as a livelihood, as a land use, and that has really helped in control of habitat destruction. And
thank you very much.
Yeah,
thank you very much, Dr. Omondi. We shall now go to the last, but by no means least presenter, and that is Dr. Philip Murudhi, who will then talk to us about resource mobilization for rhino management. Dr. Murudhi, welcome, please.
Yes, thank you very much, moderator. I'll just share my screen now. And I will be speaking about resource mobilization for rhino protection and management. I'm a member of the Rhino Management Committee at Kenya Wildlife Service for several years and work at the African Wildlife Foundation as in charge of species and science. Thank you very much, panelists, for setting the stage for this. The big question remains, where will the support come from? Where will the support that the Honorable Cabinet Secretary talked about, the $4 million per year, and the technical support come from? Just to remind the participants that we conserve what we have had from the other panelists is we conserve for two main reasons. One is to maintain the species and the habitats, so maintaining viable and ecologically functional populations embedded in their natural habitats is very important. But also for socio-economic development and really for our own human well-being. So with that as the background, how do we, I'll now look at how we mobilize, make some suggestions, look at some challenges and opportunities for mobilizing enough or adequate resources for rhino conservation. I'll start with the need for a clear shared vision and a smart plan based on a clear theory of change. We must know where we're going. We already had where we're coming from. Rob, Brett, and Mike have told us, have provided their backgrounds. The CS has told us about a successful program that needs to be improved. Do we have, after we have had a clear shared vision and a smart plan, do we have a fundraising strategy and capacity? And I think this is an area that we need to look at. Do we know our constituents well? And are we coordinated? After we've gotten the money, do we service the customer, who is our donor, and the Kenyans properly? And we have good metrics and feedback loops, learning and doing adaptive management. In Kenya, we have been quite lucky. Since I started engaging in rhino conservation around in the 1990s, I have realized that we always have a national plan for rhinos, a national and a recovery plan. So this is usually based on a very good theory of change. For usually, if we do this, we'll get this. So at one point, as Brett said, we articulated that if we do some action, some strategies, we will be able to grow our rhino population by 5% per annum to reach 2,000 rhinos by 2020. We are not yet there. We have clear benchmarks and with metrics. I do suggest that we need to look at this plan, socialize it amongst our many stakeholders, but also create a fundraising strategy that has dedicated staff. We have staff now. We are not meeting the entire budget, so some work needs to be done there. The next thing I would like to suggest is annual budgets that are done with all stakeholders, really articulating and being clear about what resources are available from Kenya Wildlife Service and partners from government. What are the budget deficits? Can we share a document which will show our priority and unfunded needs aligned to the action plan? A coordinated approach is important. In the middle there, I have put the government, obviously Kenya Wildlife Service, who has the mandate and can coordinate the rest. This is what I consider, although there could be more, as a major constituency for rhino conservation in the country. The donors, the individuals, foundations, zoos have played a big role, bilateral and multilateral agencies such as USAID, the EU and others. But I just want to highlight a few where I would think, so we need to maintain those donors that we have at the moment. Donors need to stay with us and go the journey with us. We've got the vision, I've got the strategy for fundraising. Can we keep those that we have? The local population, especially the youth, I would suggest, Mr. Moderator, that we need to ensure that youth are, rhinos are at the heart and minds of our youth, that people, local, especially tourists, continue to visit our parks and we increase those numbers so that our parks can be well funded. We have relied a lot on international tourism, and we know what COVID does, and that is important. International tourism is very important, but also can we create a good market for local tourism. The counties is another place I wanted to highlight as a key stakeholder. Counties such as, we have good lessons from Narok with the Masai Mara, and people go there to see the big five, including the rhino. Can other counties such as Samburu, such as Isiolo, Taveta learn from that? Social media, the media is very important. I've just mentioned the importance of having rhino in the minds and hearts of Kenyans. So using social media, can we tell our good stories, positive stories, and also private sector? I will be touching on some of this in the next slides. Following on the theme of coordination, we are suggesting a creation of and a revamping of a Kenya Rhino Partners Forum. This is a forum where working with Kenya Wildlife Service aligned to the National Action and Recovery Plan, we would mobilize resources. And actually strategic objective 5 requires us to do this. This is not to control people, to control the NGOs and others who are already supporting. It is to make it coordinated. Proposed members are those listed there. They are already talking to each other. But one thing that I could suggest that this forum could do is do a joint fundraising campaign, joint fundraising. So for example, if we identify a national level priority, like the expansion of Ungulia, Rob Brett told us about some sites where rhino are not increasing, and losing reproductive capacity for a sanctuary is equivalent to poaching because you lose a rhino a year. That is so if such national priorities are identified, they can be fundraised for.
Philip.
Yes.
You're running out of time.
Oh, then, okay, I'll go very quickly. If you just be allowed 1 minute. Partnerships with the companies who are already using logos, such as the cement companies, naming and adoption programs in line with the Quita Izina, the naming program for mountain gorillas. I suggest here, Bwana CS, that this is a high-level naming program, not really interfering with what is already going on site, but this could raise quite substantial money. The rhino bonds were mentioned. There is a clear theory of change on this. And here the key thing is investing tied to outcomes. Very, very important. And Kenya Wildlife Service and the South African National Parks are implementing this quite well, although in the initial stages. Finally, embedding rhino needs in other programs. The conservancies have been mentioned, but rhinos management in protected areas, not competing programs, but working together. And partnerships with universities, such as the partnership with Jomo Kenyatta University that is creating our genetic database, which is needed for biological management, selling Kenya through Magical Kenya. And finally, I want to end with really the importance of giving our donors, whether new or old, good service. Because if they stay with us, we can succeed. We can maintain the 5% level. And in fact, if Kenya succeeds, then we can also contribute to the region or species recovery, because the rhinos we have here are part of the regional and Africa-wide program. Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator and participants.
Thank you very much, Dr. Philip Murudhi. Indeed, you brought in some very good ideas on how we can mobilize resources for rhino management. Indeed, to the panelists, I would like to just come back and say, I don't know whether there's anything the panelists want to add on. I'm giving a minute. I'm donating 1 minute before I give it back to our guest speaker to wrap up the webinar for us. I don't know if any of the panelists would like to just add on 1 or 2 things, and then we can hand it over to the guest speaker. Well, with that, may I kindly request the guest speaker to give closing remarks and probably point us to the future vision of rhino conservation in Kenya. And after that, I trust we'll be able to run that video, see if we can be able to run it at the very end. But Honorable Najib Balala, the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you very much, Director General of KWS and moderator of today's webinar. I want to say thank you to the panelists, and also thank you to the people who have presented their questions or ideas and contributed to the success of today's webinar. We have taken note of all your questions and your ideas, and there's a team behind the scenes here of KWS that are going to take action on your contribution and your ideas. But I want to say that I have learned a lot myself, because I'm not an expert in conservation, but definitely in the last 2.5 years, I try to learn as much as I can, and I try to engage and champion this cause. I think it's a noble cause to preserve our natural heritage, which is wildlife and the issues of conservation. So I've learned and I converted myself to a conservationist. But I've learned a lot today also from all panelists. Rob, you have talked about Tsavo. I remember when I was a kid, you see elephants everywhere on that Mombasa-Nairobi road in the early 70s and 80s. But now you can hardly see anything. What do we do to revive that? I think we should come, again, it's a lesson, KWS and partners. And I like what Philip Murudhi said of African Wildlife Foundation. I think we need to coordinate, to be a coordinated entity or coordinated society that will bring donors, medias, foundations, governments, and counties and say, we have one agenda we want to address collectively, maybe rhinos, and then work together, fundraise, but also plan for it in the next 2040, up to 2040. So that is a wonderful idea I've learned from Philip. Thank you very much. And Rob, thank you very much. Success stories we have seen both in Lewa and in Old Pejeta. We have seen these success stories, and I want to applaud them, and also others like Old Jogi, Sarah, that's the NRT conservancies, and also Solio. Yes, there are opportunities. Particularly, there are key opportunities on biodiversity and space, and then there is fundraising. And I like the idea of the Rhino Bond. And Rob, you have been part of this as well, with Giles Davis and others, so we can pursue these issues. We tried to do the Rhino naming a few months ago, but particularly to raise funds for rangers who protect these animals, because the rangers are the front heroes who play a major role in this very difficult and dangerous situation where there's a demand using the bullet. So that is dangerous, and we needed to appreciate them. So we created the Rangers Welfare Fund, and our contribution towards naming ceremonies, we are charging simple $1,000 for every name. I want to thank the Young Presidents Organization led by Karim Wisanji for coordinating the YPO, and we raised almost 3.3 million Kenya shillings for the welfare of rangers. But I think more important, we need to go a notch higher. The cost of conservation is very expensive. It cannot be left only on government. And also now we have realized with COVID, it cannot be only left for tourism to finance conservation. So we need to think out of the box, to be creative in fundraising as well. Somebody, Alan Dixon, said here, because of COVID, some of the donors even do not have streams of revenues. They're depleted already. How do we become more innovative in fundraising and work together? But I want to say thank you very much. We have seen all these contributions and ideas and questions, but I want to say this is the beginning. We are just talking about rhinos. We decided the webinar will be the best thing to bring everybody on board and also save some costs, and that cost goes to maintaining rhinos all over the country. So I want to say, DG, thank you very much. Harry, who is our technical person, thank you very much. Panelists, thank you very much. And also my colleagues in the Ministry of Tourism and Wildlife, and also the rest of the participants in this webinar. Asanteni sana. And we are committed as government, and we are committed as a nation, and we are committed as the United Nations for conserving these iconic animals, the rhinos. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, guest speaker. We shall now play the video that we tried to play earlier. And I wish to thank all the panelists, the participants, the tech team in the background for a wonderful session that we've had and made this day indeed to be recognized in a way that is different from the way we do it normally. In this way, we're able to share information and be able to interact on this absolutely beautiful species. Thank you all so very much, and God bless you all.
Today we are here at Olpejeta Conservancy. We are here to harvest the eggs for the endangered species of northern white rhinos who have been endangered. There are only remaining 2 of them. One is a mother, which is called Najin, and the second is a daughter called Fatu. Unfortunately, the father died by the name Sudan 2 years ago. But today we are in collaboration with our partners, which is Germany, the Research Institute in Leipzig, and then also an Italian laboratory in Italy, and then Czech Republic, because the animals came from Czech Republic, and then definitely Kenya. So this partnership is to develop research so that we can be able to make sure that these eggs fertilize and be able to be transferred to the surrogates and be able to produce much more white northern rhinos.
Thank you all very much once again, and have a lovely evening or morning. Thank you.
Thank you, Bonadiji.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Everyone. Bye.
Bye bye.